Okay, so I'm not even sure if I should be sharing this because I'm still trying to wrap my head around what happened. This isn't some ghost story or anything like that. It's just one of those things that you really hope never happens to you. A few days ago, I went out to one of my usual hunting spots. I live in a pretty rural area in the US and I've been hunting for as long as I can remember. The forest around here is mostly untouched and I know it like the back of my hand. I've been going into this spot for years and it's quiet, reliable and well hidden, the kind of place where you usually don't run into anyone else. So anyway, I packed my usual gear and drove out there early in the morning, hoping for a productive day. As soon as I started down the trail, something felt off. Not in a big, obvious way, just a weird nagging feeling like I wasn't alone. But I brushed it off. I figured I was just anxious or had too much coffee. The thing about hunting is, you spend a lot of time in silence, which usually makes you feel relaxed. But this time, the quiet felt heavy, like the forest was holding its breath or something. Again, I shrugged it off and kept walking, hoping it was just my mind playing tricks. I hadn't walked too far when I saw something strange. It was a set of boot prints, clearly fresh in the damp ground. Now, seeing tracks isn't that unusual, but these prints that didn't sit right with me. They were large, like from someone heavy, and deep enough that whoever left them had been moving slow and deliberately. I looked around, trying to see if maybe there was another hunter nearby, but there was no sign of anyone. I followed the tracks for a bit, curious if they'd lead to something, maybe even some good game nearby. But instead of finding anything useful, the tracks seemed to loop and wander without any real direction. This wasn't the way most hunters move. Typically we know where we are going, moving straight to spots we know are productive. But these tracks went in circles, crisscrossing back and forth as if the person had been wandering or watching. Starting to feel a bit uneasy, I decided to keep going toward my usual spot, a small clearing with a tree stand I'd set up years back. It's a bit of a hike, but it's isolated and the view is good for watching game come and go. By the time I got there, the forest was starting to feel normal again. The only sound was the breeze rustling through the trees, and I told myself I'd just gotten worked up over nothing. So I climbed up to my stand, settled in, and started scanning the trees for any sign of movement. As I sat there, I felt the stand sway a bit with the wind, and that's when I heard it, a faint metallic ding. It was such a soft sound that I almost thought I'd imagined it. But after a few seconds I heard it again, a soft chime like a bell. Confused, I leaned over the edge of the stand and looked down, and that's when I saw it, a small silver bell hanging from the ladder I'd just climbed up. It was tied to one of the rungs with a bit of a string. I didn't put that bell there, and nobody I knew would have done that either. It just hung there, swinging gently in the breeze. My stomach dropped, and a part of me wondered if this was some weird prank, maybe a local messing with me or something. But the thought of someone coming all the way out here just to mess with me felt wrong. I hadn't seen any other cars, and it would have taken a real effort to hike in this far just to pull a prank. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was probably nothing. I was here to hunt after all, not to get freaked out by a stupid bell. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I scanned the trees, but everything looked normal. I forced myself to focus, to settle in, hoping some deer or wild game would come along so I could stop thinking about that damn bell. After what felt like an hour, I started hearing something else. Faint, like it was carried on the wind. It was whispering, soft and hard to make out, but definitely there. At first, I thought maybe it was the wind playing tricks on me, but then the whispering grew louder. I couldn't understand what was being said, but it sounded like more than one voice. Every hair on my body stood on end, and I felt this cold sweat prickling down my back. I didn't want to seem like a coward, but I couldn't take it anymore. Whatever was going on, I didn't want any part of it. I slowly packed up my gear, trying not to make too much noise, and began climbing down the ladder. The bell chimed again as I moved, which made me flinch, but I was determined to get out of there. When I finally made it to the ground, I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking I was done with this whole creepy ordeal. But as I turned around, ready to head back down the trail, I saw them. Two large men standing about 10 yards away. They were just staring at me, and each of them held a hunting knife in his hand. They didn't say a word, just stood there, watching me with these unreadable expressions. My mind went blank, and I just froze, gripping my rifle as tight as I could. I didn't know what to do. There was no way I could shoot them both before one of them got to me. I forced myself to take a deep breath and shouted, "Don't come any closer or I will shoot." I was bluffing, but I hoped it would be enough to scare them off. For a second they just stood there, like they were deciding what to do. But then I heard something else, a twig snapping behind me. My instincts kicked in and I bolted. I ran, crashing through the underbrush, not caring about the noise, just focused on putting as much distance between me and them as possible. I heard them moving behind me, following for a bit, but the footsteps eventually faded. I didn't stop running until I could see the trailhead and the faint outline of my car through the trees. When I finally reached my car, I didn't look back. I just jumped in, locked the doors, and peeled out of there as fast as I could. My heart was pounding and my hands were shaking so bad I could barely keep the wheel steady. I've never felt that kind of fear before, not even close. Now I keep thinking about those tracks, the bell, the whispering. Everything seemed like it was a setup, like they were luring me in. And I can't help but wonder what would have happened if I had stayed up there a bit longer, if I hadn't noticed the bell or heard the whispering. The whole thing feels like a nightmare I can't wake up from. I haven't gone back since and I don't plan to. I'm just grateful I made it out of there. If I'd stuck around, I don't think I'd be here telling this story. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still see those men standing there, knives in hand, watching me. And every time I can't help but feel like I was just one wrong move away from becoming the prey instead of the hunter.